Welcome back. Now, Finweek investigates how China's recent decision to levy VAT on transporting freight and related costs, which is speculated to increase charges on exports originating from China by up to 6%, could create export opportunities for South Africa, and what government needs to do in order to harness these opportunities to their full potential. Hart, Chief Strategist at Investment Solutions, and Coenraad, Bezuidenhout, Executive Director of the Manufacturing Circle, are with us at the desk. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Now, maybe let me start with you, Coenraad, and ask you to do the basic task of unpacking the impact the levy is likely to have on both exports and imports from South Africa and into China.
Look, I think it's going to be a mixed bag. It depends, because there are varying degrees to which Chinese exports are being subsidized by incentives, and it's very difficult to understand those because in many cases they are opaque. It's not clear to us, and they seem to be adjustable in certain instances. So there's a degree to which that will subsidize the impact. There's of course also a degree to which some of the more underhanded tactics, such as under-invoicing or sending stuff through under wrong tariff codes, could also impact on the situation. But I think overall, if there is going to be impact, it will take at least 3 months or so for us to feel it because of the procurement timelines. I think it's not going to be massive in relation to other costs that are increasing at the moment, administered prices, labor, and so on. And I think that if anything, it's going to open up opportunities for local procurement.
Just to put that in context, how much of those underhanded tactics are going on at the moment, and what kind of an impact are they having?
Look, it's very difficult to quantify that because it's different in different manufacturing categories or industries. But just this morning I was speaking to a chemical producer who is now facing a situation where they're the only supplier of a particular chemical in South Africa, and all of a sudden there is competition from the Chinese at 50% of the cost for which they can supply here. That tells you there's a problem, because the raw materials are more expensive than for what they can land the product in South Africa. And so that happens in a range of industries, a range of manufacturing categories. And it has been escalating because manufactured exports to South Africa from China has increased exponentially over the years.
Chris, I want to just jump slightly off topic here in terms of the Chinese element, but we've seen BMW, Toyota, they've made it very clear that South Africa is not an attractive place to do business in terms of manufacturing at the moment because of our labour issues. Can we quantify what's happening there, and are there any easy wins in terms of reversing some of this negativity?
There are actually easy wins. To my mind, there's a reason why we have a strong motor manufacturing industry here, because there has been policy support for the industry. When you compare, say, South Africa's motor industry to Australia's, ours is about 3 or 4 times bigger in terms of number of vehicles produced. So it's not as if that things have imploded, but we clearly have gone off the rails. In other words, the zenith was about 4 or 5 years ago for our motor industry, and has been sort of a little bit limbo in a sense since. And we need no motor industry decisions actually get taken in South Africa. They get taken from headquarters miles away, and they look at the whole wide world, and they choose, and they can choose any destination they like. And we've forgotten that. All right, NUMSA, I don't think had any. Well, I don't think they've got any inkling because they think it's a local company or whatever. It seems to be strange, but the reality is now coming home. You cannot just have single stakeholders winning, and their win is a loss to everybody else. You have to have a proper, decent commercial arrangement so that we can actually be competitive. But coming back to the actual topic, I'd bring in another sort of like little tangent, if you like, is a recent decision by the South African authorities to literally make the shipping industry tax-free, if you like, because no ships are registered in South Africa. And we should be quite a strong maritime nation, given our geopolitical position. But it's taxes that have chased us away. And likewise, the Chinese now, in a sense, maybe scoring an own goal by taxing the transport. It's not the whole export that they're taxing, it's the transport component. So I don't think it's a big impact. I don't think this is a huge thing. But nevertheless, incrementally adds on a bit of cost. Now, if they're very cost competitive, it might make very little difference. But if there's a tipping point, there's a straw that can break a camel's back. And we already have, when it comes to shipping again, what we are doing effectively is damage control, because the damage is already done in terms of what we've done, had an uncompetitive arrangement when it came to shipping. All right, and we need to actually look at industry as a whole and say, how can we look at the competitiveness? We cannot keep loading costs onto business, whether it's administrative cost or regulatory costs or whatever, and not take into account the context. Too often we're trying to solve all the problems at once, and then we solve none. All right, and we need to actually then prioritize problems in this country. And I believe the biggest problem is poverty. Not poverty, unemployment specifically.
Chris, before we get to that aspect of the conversation, I think it's a very, very important aspect of the conversation. I perhaps want to swing it a little bit, and I want to look at the opportunities that we're perhaps not delving into. And maybe, Coenraad, if you can speak a little bit about what this means for local procurement players. I mean, if we look at the impact of the Chinese in the textile industry and the like, is this a dream come true for local procurement players?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because there are a number of factors that are at play. As Chris said, that there are a number of things that are impeding on our ability to compete effectively. One of which is, for which we get aimed at quite often, is for the fact that we say that the playing fields are not level with respect to the incentives that are enjoyed on both sides, but also with respect to the trade arrangements. We're small, very open economy. There's huge barriers to trade getting into China with manufactured products, which is stuff that we are trying to address through the BRICS Business Council and elsewhere. But for local procurers, I think the opportunity is there now to establish the linkages which are missing in South Africa, for them to link up with procurers that have the capacity to manufacture for their needs, and that there are many examples of that out there.
Of course, we also understand that policy plays a very important role in creating a conducive environment to actually build that manufacturing capacity. Yesterday we had the big announcement by the President looking at the amendments being made to the BBBE codes and how that's shifting the landscape. Maybe talk to us a little bit, Chris, about our scope or capacity to increase the basket of what we export to more than just commodities at this time. Is the environment conducive to do that?
I believe so, and I actually believe that there's areas in manufacturing, for instance, that I think we need to be exploring. And to my mind, we, in the case of beneficiation, we look too much to actually changing the form of what we dig out of the ground, which is again a manufacturing process. It's not a mining process at all, and we need to examine why it's not economically viable to change the form of it here, and it is viable to change the form of it in Taiwan or China or somewhere else, or after transporting it across the ocean. So that's what needs to be done. But I think in this case, like we've built a motor manufacturing capacity, I think we can actually build a capacity of building capital equipment for the mining industry by using what I call backward integration. In other words, to actually look at the procurement side, we should be a global center of the world of producing mining and construction equipment, because the two go together. Not South Korea, they don't mine anything, but they produce the stuff. And I do think that is an area we could look at not just South Africa, but Southern Africa for component manufacturing and that kind of thing.
This reverse integration is quite interesting. Having chatted to somebody, for instance, at Massmart, when Walmart came here, the immediate pushback was, oh no, South African businesses are going to get squeezed out by. And they don't have the approach of, hey, this could be an opportunity for a South African business to get into the Walmart supply chain. And do you think that's just a case? And then maybe if you jump sideways and you look at what's happening in the textile industry there in Newcastle, etc., where they've actually just said we don't actually need this minimum wage that's being prescribed to us. We actually just want a job at the moment. There seems to be a bit of innovation that can happen, but a lot of it sits as a mindset. You see, my sense is that we need to get our productivity right, and that sometimes means economies of scale. So when I'm very wary about what I call rent-seeking behavior, understanding sometimes this is a difficult area. It's not just straightforward.
chicken's an example. More recently, it's not just a straightforward black and white setup. But to my mind, if we're not prepared to actually compete with the Chinese, in other words, put up plants that will produce 1 million T-shirts in a day instead of 20,000 in a year. You know what if you know what I mean. In other words, invest in the quality scale, and then say, but these are where the level playing fields are not level, and that sort of thing. Then I'm sympathetic to that argument. But until then, I'm not that sympathetic, because we actually do need to try and prevent people looking for what I call as a free, easy ride and a soft option by just putting up barriers and let everybody pay for an uncompetitive business.
Perhaps, Chris, let me jump in here, where a very interesting narrative has been developing around revisiting this idea of export-led growth and perhaps trying to tap into domestic demand, considering the demographics in Africa in general. And maybe let me, Coenraad, let you take this on. Do you think it's fair, or is it too early to begin to say that export-led growth strategies have become redundant?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a silly argument in any event. Although there is a problem with the demand in our traditional export markets, we also know that there is a severe problem with access to new markets for manufactured goods. It's there because of tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers when we speak about South America and when we speak about Southeast Asia. But it's there because of red tape and infrastructural issues when we speak about Africa, which represents huge opportunities. Local market is very important, because you need that solid base to make you more efficient for export purposes. But and we should expand on that because of the opportunities that are available to us there now. But there's still a lot of work to be done.
But what's never taught, it's not taught in textbooks or at all, is because when you look at GDP, exports is the plus to GDP, imports are the minus. We don't understand the concept of import-led growth either. All right, and we do have that. All right, in fact, our motor industry is an example of import-led growth. You first import, establish that domestic market. Once you've got sufficient critical mass to actually produce locally, that then actually follows, and that's import-led growth. And we mustn't lose sight of the fact that imports help us to be exposed with technology, etc., and all that.
But Chris, aside from the motor industry, which industries do you think we could be doing a lot better, and where there's opportunity and potential that we're not exploiting and maximizing at the moment?
I think agriculture, food processing, we're there, but I think more. I think the capital equipment in manufacturing, and put it this way, there isn't anything that South Africa genetically can't do, or can't do for genetic reasons. We need to actually look at the policy and local conditions.
Thank you so much. That's thanks to our two familiar faces. That's Chris Hart from Investment Solutions and Coenraad Bezuidenhout from Manufacturing Circle. Here comes our new segment now, which is entitled Befriend the Trend. In today's Befriend the Trend, we look at a phenomenon creeping into the business arena: artificial intelligence. We ask, is this a trend to cash in on, or one to be wary of? Now, Jessica, when I was reading the article, the first line, I think, said, companies can make money without working, and that's where I was sold. That's all I needed to hear. Can you briefly unpack what we mean by this encroaching of artificial intelligence?
Well, basically what's happening is computers are becoming far more powerful and far smarter than they used to be. So they actually can do a lot of human functions. They can pick up humor, they can pick up nuances, they can make decisions, they can go through massive amounts of data that was never possible before. So companies are beginning to see the opportunities in this, and what McKinsey has called the automation frontier is starting to happen, in which computers are beginning to be able to do jobs that we call knowledge workers, people who have to think for a living. Computers are starting to take over some of those jobs. So companies can either bring in computers and let them take over some of those jobs, or they can upskill knowledge workers and let them work together. So it really is a decision that corporates have to take.
I mean, looking at the South African context, it's clearly going to be a very, very contested arena, this artificial intelligence, in light of our labor markets. Mark, from your point of view, do you think that this is a risk that trade unionists might be looking at and think we certainly can't afford to have this creeping in?
I'm going to be blunt, they won't see it happening. Like, if you, let's use Google as the example. Google's a perfect example of a business that uses artificial intelligence. Those ads that they come up with and they decide, what do you feel like seeing today? What should you see? They'll look at your browsing history. They'll do that. It's there. It's happening right in front of you. Facebook works out exactly. You've posted you're feeling sad today, and I can guarantee an advert will pop up saying this will make you happy today. Whatever.
Are you saying that we're
blind to what a lot of
smack bang in the middle of artificial intelligence already, and we're probably just not even
There are
aware
a lot
of
of things that you just don't know about. The automation of a lot of factories is already happening. The robots are becoming far bigger contributors in the manufacturing industries as well. There's a lot of things you just don't actually realize that they're happening, and how smart a lot of these devices are becoming, and the intelligence that's being built into the data, that the so-called big data phenomenon. So it's happening right around us, and if we don't realize you're not going to see it before you know that you're participating.